Hello everyone, I'm happy to be here with you today. I would like to tell you about 3 Latvian photographers and also about the notion, it's too high, and also about the notion of vaporizing masculinities and how these photographers are dealing with this issue. And in the title of my presentation you already see this word masculinity. Lately, this term, especially in the plural, has come to replace what has been previously referred to as men's studies and has become quite widely used. However, the meaning of the term is rather vague, as you probably know. Most scholars have agreed about what hegemonic masculinity could be, namely that it is man in power, which in each particular situation, of course, indicates something different. Most scholars have also agreed that this type of masculinity is exclusive and unhealthy for personal and social reasons, and that it has to be altered, since we believe gender roles are not biologically grounded but are socially or historically constructed. In this presentation, however, I will use the term in its most conventional and maybe sometimes contradictory sense, namely as an indicator of a certain masculine ideal or attributes that the real man has to acquire. It can also indicate some kind of lifestyle, life settings of men, their habits and traits. Therefore, I would like to offer you works of 3 Latvian photographers, female photographers, of course, who try to capture this masculinity or at least its traces in Latvian society today. These traces can be arranged around 3 figures, which I will talk now more about: the hero, the father, and everyday man. So, the first artist I want to speak about is Evita Goze and her project On Guard, which is based on documentation of the youth guard in Latvian Jaunsargi. This is the youth branch of the voluntary military organization, the Latvian National Guard, which performs traditional National Guard duties such as crisis response and support for military operations. The Youth Guard is the largest youth movement in Latvia nowadays, bringing together boys and, by the way, also girls from the age of 12 or even 10 to 18. They study history, learn about maps, military tactics, navigations, do sports and go for hikes. And by the way, they also learn how to shoot. Evita Goze was present there not only as a photographer, but she actually joined their organization during various activities, as well to share the experience of the youngsters. Excuse me. The military has been traditionally linked to normative masculinity, which includes traits such as being strong, tough, brave, as you know, and if necessary also defensive, aggressive and violent. Being in good physical shape, strong-willed, fearless. Boys don't cry, as all of us know, and can beat the enemy, thus acquiring the identity of a soldier, warrior, and eventually a hero. There is a strong patriotic and nationalistic sensation in this theme, and one cannot deny these topics are very acute in today's Latvia, not only because of the mixed feelings about refugees, even though we have just a few of them, but very many discussions, but because of the pains of the past when Latvia was occupied several times and for long and hard periods. On the other hand, right-wing politicians, of course, make use of this rhetoric in a very populist and oversimplified way, which sometimes sounds really silly. However, the work of Evita Goze does not affirm hegemonic masculinity. On the contrary, as she has claimed, this series emphasizes 2 things. First, the vulnerability and inconstancy of the masculine role, and second, its performative aspect. Being a man is something you learn, since you are not born with it. And obviously you can choose in which situation you act like a man and in which you do not. This idea of being quite close to what Judith Butler has defined as performative aspect of gender has a political impact because it makes an individual responsible for his behavior. Evita Guose admits that a military education can serve as a contemporary initiation ritual for adulthood and at the same time satisfy a romantic boyhood dream for going back to nature, spending days sleeping in a tent in the forest. She says, I quote, "I want to emphasize vulnerability, insecurities, inconsistencies, and moments of rest or suspension, and by doing so, stress the performative and unstable nature of masculinity and also the idea of a soldier itself. The difference between young and older kids is quite huge," she continues. "When they are just starting out, they look lost, mix things up, make mistakes, while the older ones already look almost like soldiers. They have mastered the role and their appearance becomes more guarded." I would like to focus on the later part of the last sentence, appearance becomes more guarded. I don't have enough time to explain it in detail, but shortly, I want to mark that this is very important for traditional masculine identity, to be in control of oneself, including body, emotions, and mind. It also means that being a man implies a certain mastered appearance. You have to look firm and self-confident, and as some theoreticians have argued, to be a man you have to wear an armor which protects you from all the pains and emotions, also caused, among other things, by women. Now, since I have mentioned pains, emotions, and women, I would like to go to the figure of the father, the second one, which is, of course, very dominant in a patriarchal society, including the image of the Christian God, the father as the head of a family or a nation, and the father as the genius and the big artist who has given birth in a paradoxical way to a new artistic style, practice, a national art school, or the founder of language and law, and the ultimate authority. I would like to give my comment on this by referring to second artist Ieva Balode and her project Fatherless. In this project, Ieva Balode has collected series from young women in Latvia and Finland. She collected stories from young women in Latvia and Finland who have spent their childhood without a father. Each story goes with a diptych, thus presenting an image of the most vivid memories as the artist has defined them. In this work is, I quote, not only about fathers and their lonely or not that lonely daughters. They are also about mothers, families, women, men, and in the end, about love and fate and surrounding broken families nowadays. End of quote. Statistics claim that currently in Latvia, according to data 2011, 30% of kids younger than 18 live in a single mother family, while only 4% reside with a single father. Of course, there are different reasons why a couple splits up and why a woman decides to raise her children on her own. However, I believe that the traits inscribed in normative masculinity often support this scenario of a man leaving his home and kids and having more than one home and kids simultaneously. Men always seem to have the privilege to choose, to stay or to go. What are the reasons for this? I will mention some of them. The first one is the autonomy of the masculine subject, which is a long-standing ideal in the Western European philosophical tradition, with the risk of solipsism being very high. Rationalism and agency are often perceived as the necessary conditions of independence, while relationships, bondings, emotions, and intersubjectivity are seen as obstacles. This philosophical problem finds its expression in the everyday half-joke, half-reality that states that girls want to get married, while boys want to have what? have sex, of course. The second reason, as I see, is the traditional notion of masculinity that implies orientation towards career, work, and achievement, marking family life, care, and engagement with children as feminine spheres. Therefore, to be a caring father is simply not masculine. Sorry, you need to go out to conquer a new territory instead of staying home with your kids. And the third one is the notion of the real man, which is often constructed as a sexual predator, women as his trophies. Since we believe the need for sex in man is so overwhelming, we justify adultery. In fact, having many lovers is nothing special for a man. He will not be labeled a whore. On the contrary, his sexual activity confirms his masculine energy. This view of man as a sexual predator is sustained by various discourses, for instance, by that of art history and its nude tradition, and already in today's presentation we saw several examples of that. The legacy of prostitution, sexual exploitation, man-oriented erotica and pornography, and magazines like Playboy, for example, where the image is promoted, I quote, of a fellow who loves his stereo equipment, his expensive liquor, and his bachelor part, and refuses to be cornered into marriage just because a young lady he had bedded had the misfortune to get pregnant. End of quote from an article by Susan Brown Miller, published this September, and named Hugh Hefner Was My Enemy. As you know, Hugh Hefner is the founder of Playboy. Yes, so the stories collected by Ieva Balode reveal a wide set of emotions that the daughters experience towards their fathers: love, affection, admiration, longing, pain, disappointment, and disgust. Most of these men left their daughters for another woman. Others were abusive or alcoholic. Some died or are unknown to this day. Now it's time to speak about the everyday man. So I would like to show you some works of Vika Eksta and her series Eastern Europe's Man. The type of man she was documenting here reveals certain qualities. They are wild, rough, physically strong, and at the same time often self-destructing and very often drinking too much. We can assume the work defines some kind of Eastern European macho, like this, for example. When you look at the images, you observe that these are mainly men in their more or less middle age and who remarkably come from a working class background. Quite often they are half naked, revealing a body covered with hair, tattoos, and even a scar. Can happen? Yes. The picture displays scenes of work and leisure, including hunting and, of course, drinking. At the same time, according to the artist, these are the traits that constitute the understanding of masculinity in Latvia today. For me, in these men, I also feel the atmosphere of the Soviet times and their legacy, which is still very much present nowadays, especially in rural and countryside communities, where the living space is divided into the male and the female halves, namely that there are activities that only men are supposed to do and activities only women are supposed to do. The images also tell about the level of education and economic condition of these men and their families, if they have one. At the same time, you cannot deny that these guys feel rather comfortable. They look quite satisfied and self-confident. I wonder if this is because of the beer they have just been drinking, because they feel at ease with their masculine role and content with their own performance, or rather because they exhibit some kind of optimism typical of the post-Soviet mentality? Who knows? The three figures I have talked talked about today with you, the hero, the father, and everyday man, reveal the processes of transformation in Latvian society nowadays. These identities are, on the one hand, trying to preserve the traditional pathos of manhood, which is especially evident in Vika Ekstas work, and in which, as an ideal, can be found also in Evita Guaz's series. On the other hand, the role and life settings of men are being subjected to criticism and change, which coincides with the slow gender awareness developing in Latvia right now. So I believe, or at least I hope, that the artworks I have just discussed with you help to clarify at least some processes of contemporary Latvian society, its shortcomings, illusions, and challenges. Thank you very much.